Hello, everyone. This is Miss May, and I'm going to share with you a little bit today about the digestive system. So, this is titled The Digestive Process Begins. Um, the definition for digestion is it is a process by which the body breaks down food into small nutrient molecules. There are several functions of the digestive system. One of them is to break down food into molecules, obviously. Also, another function of the digestive system, molecules get absorbed into the blood and they get carried throughout the body. And then, third of all, waste get eliminated from the body. And so that is also part of the job of the digestive system. Okay. You see here a picture, and all the things in color represent features of the digestive system. You can sort of see the outline or the profile of someone's face, their eyes and nose and mouth. And looking at the parts starting at the top, this right here is the nose. So this orange here represents the nasal cavity. This right here is the mouth. So this is, how air can come into your mouth also. And then at the back of your nasal cavity, at the back of your mouth, you have salivary glands right here. And then underneath your tongue, this is your tongue right here, you have salivary glands underneath here too. And those are both part of digestion. That's why they're in color. You have this long tube, though, that comes from your mouth, goes all the way down. We sometimes call it your throat. You might think of when you swallow some food, it goes down your throat. Well, we actually call it the esophagus. Okay. And there's another tube that runs right beside it all the way down, and it goes into the lungs. It's not really pictured here because it is part of the respiratory system more than it is the digestive system. But at the top of this tube happens to be called the trachea or the windpipe. And the top of it, though, has this flap of tissue that we call the epiglottis. And every time we are eating and we go to swallow food, that little flap of tissue closes so that food does not go down the wrong pipe and we get choked from it. So that's just a little safety device that our body knows to do. But as we chew food in our mouth, that's the first part of digestion. That's mechanical digestion. You also have chemical digestion in your mouth because the salivary glands produce saliva or spit, we might say, and it helps to moisten that food. And our teeth help to they physically break the food down into smaller pieces. So by the time you're ready to swallow that bite of food that you have in your mouth, it's just like a big ball of mushed up food. And that material, it has a special term. It's called bolus. So when we go to swallow our food, the bolus goes down our throat and it goes directly into this J-shaped organ that we call the stomach. And in the stomach, that is where most of the mechanical digestion is going to take place, is in the stomach, because the stomach is a large muscle and it churns, it squeezes, and sort of like the heart does with our heartbeat contracting. It squeezes and meshes up the food that we swallow, and it goes down into our stomach. Actually, in the stomach, that bolus, that food particle that goes into our stomach, after it mixes with acids and stuff that are in the stomach, and it gets churned and moved about, it becomes very liquefied. And at that time, it has another name. We call it chyme. And so it's just more liquid nutrients from the food that we originally ate. But when food leaves our stomach, it goes down through here, and this green part is the large intestines. This is the small intestines. So when it leaves our stomach, it goes behind the large intestines, and it goes to this smaller tube that we call the small intestines. Now, the small intestines is smaller in diameter and around, but it is very long. It is around 20 feet long. And as it goes through there, nutrients get absorbed by the lining of the small intestines. The lining of the small intestines has these little finger-like projections that we call villi, and you'll learn about those in a little bit. But when the digested food material, once it goes through the small intestines, the nutrients get absorbed. And by the time it is ready to go into this green part, which is the large intestines, by that time it is mainly water and undigested food. So it goes through the large intestines. The large intestines is larger than the smaller intestines in diameter, but it is shorter. It's only about 5 feet in length. And so, as it's moving through the large intestines, also known as the colon, water is getting absorbed. So, by the time it gets down here to the very end of the large intestines, pretty much all that's left is undigested food. So, that undigested food gets compacted in here, or gets compressed in an area that we call the rectum. And then at the very bottom, there's a little opening where that solid waste goes out of the body, and we refer to that as the anus. So let's go ahead and continue on with our lesson, but I just wanted to give you a little overview of it. Okay, we said already there's two kinds of digestion. There is mechanical and there is chemical. In mechanical digestion, foods are physically broken down into smaller pieces by your teeth. That very first bite that you take is when mechanical digestion starts. Your front teeth on the top and bottom bite into a piece of food, whether it's a burger or an apple, and they sort of act like a knife slicing into it. But then our back teeth, our molars, they're the ones that chomp down on it and chew it into smaller particles. The mechanical digestion continued, as I said earlier, too. You have something called bolus that gets chewed up, and well, not bolus doesn't get chewed up, but the food that you're eating, as it gets chewed up, we give it a name, and the name is called bolus. And then as that bolus goes down your esophagus, goes into your stomach, acids and you have gastric juices that mix up that food too. It liquefies, turns into a liquid, and when it does, we give it a name and we call it chyme. Chemical digestion. Chemicals produced by the body breaking food into smaller chemical building blocks. That is chemical digestion. An example of chemical digestion would be when we eat certain foods, like the ones pictured here. All of these are carbs. Carbs, you find carbs in a lot of your pasta, in your breads and grains, potatoes, rice, some of your fruits, even though they are good for you. They have natural sugars. Those sugars, that is carbs. So these carbohydrates can break down into glucose molecules. Glucose is a type of sugar. So that's part of chemical digestion. Okay. Enzymes might be another new word that you've not heard of before, but enzymes are a type of protein. And what their job is to speed up chemical reactions in the body. So enzymes that are get placed into our stomach, those enzymes help speed up digestion. They help the breakdown of food so that our body can absorb those nutrients from that food. Another process, a lot of your processes, if they have the suffix tion, as in shun, they are processes. So digestion, absorption. So this is the process by which nutrients or molecules pass through the wall of the digestive system into the blood. So in other words, it's the process or the act of them getting absorbed. This occurs after the food has been digested, and it mainly occurs in the small intestines. The food or the nutrients gets absorbed into the small intestines. You have some absorption later in the large intestines, but it will be water that's getting absorbed there instead of food or nutrients. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the actual process of digestion. Step one, it starts with the mouth. In the mouth, within the mouth, saliva is produced. Saliva is a fluid that's released when your mouth waters. This aids or helps in chemical digestion. chewing and grinding of your food with your teeth is a form of mechanical digestion. So in your mouth, you actually have mechanical digestion with your teeth chewing on your food, chomping on it. But then you also have chemical digestion there. That is where, the saliva, the enzymes in your saliva help to moisten your food to start breaking it down. The esophagus is step 2. So as I said, this long tube here that goes from your mouth to your stomach, that is the esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. Peristalsis, that is the name of a special muscle. The definition reads, peristalsis are involuntary waves of muscle contractions that push food down to the stomach. So we have these involuntary muscles in here. We don't have to tell them to work. They just work on their own. But they are what push the food from when you swallow your food, they push it on down into your stomach. Okay? Imagine this. Imagine you are in a tree and you decide to put your legs over the branch of a tree and you're hanging upside down. If you were to eat an apple while you're hanging upside down, that apple, that chewed up apple, it doesn't really go down to your stomach. It would go up to your stomach. But it does go in that direction. It goes from your mouth to your stomach, even though you're hanging upside down, because of that muscle, the peristalsis muscle that's found within your esophagus. You have muscles like this also that are like in the intestines, small and large intestines that keep pushing that digested food and particles and molecules all through the intestines. The epiglottis is that little flap of tissue that I mentioned earlier, and it seals off the windpipe or the trachea, and its job is to prevent food from entering the windpipe so we don't get choked. Okay, step 3 is the stomach. And as I mentioned earlier, the stomach it's not exactly a J, but it's sort of J-shaped. Most mechanical digestion that occurs in our body is going to be in the stomach. Some occurs in your mouth, but most of it's going to be in your stomach. And it's the smooth muscle that makes up the lining of the stomach. It squeezes. It's like it's contracting and releasing and contracting and releasing. And as it does that process over and over, it's actually churning up the food that's there. By the time it's in your stomach, that food, by the time it's been in there a while, it becomes what we call chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, chyme. Within your stomach, those acids that I mentioned are gastric acids or gastric juices. And gastric juices are made up mainly of 3 components. And I have their chemical formula down here at the bottom. HCl, that's hydrogen and chlorine, that's hydrochloric acid. You have a K and a Cl. K stands for potassium, Cl's chlorine, so that's potassium chloride. Down here you have Na and Cl. Na is sodium, Cl is chlorine, but together that's sodium chloride. So all 3 of these compounds are what make up those gastric juices that are found in your stomach. So hydrochloric acid, which is this right here, this chemically digests the food that gets put into your stomach into a liquid form that we call chyme. Mucus coats and protects our stomach lining so that these acids that are in our stomach don't actually burn a hole in your stomach, because a lot of acids can be, very dangerous to your body. If you were to get acid on your skin, it could burn it. If you got it in your eye or you got it on a glove or a hand or something and you touched your eye, you could burn your eye. But there's a lot of mucus on the inside of our stomach that lines our stomach that helps us. Okay, the last part of digestion, it sort of starts with our mouth, esophagus, into our stomach. The last part is where it's more of that liquid and our body is being able to take out the nutrients and the water and the material that we need from the food that we've eaten. So step 4 would be the small intestines. Most chemical digestion takes place here in the small intestines. Most of the nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream. And like I said, the lining of the small intestines has these little finger-like projections that are called villi. And these villi are what absorb the nutrients. And where does it go? It goes into your bloodstream. And then once it gets into your bloodstream, your blood, as the blood is pumped through the body, it carries those nutrients to all the cells of your body. The small intestines happens to be the longest part of the digestive tract. Okay, next we have the liver. The liver is an organ. It's sort of a triangular shaped organ. It's actually the largest organ in the digestive system. Its main job is to produce a chemical called bile. And what bile does is helps our body to break down the fats in the foods that we eat. Now, although the liver, this large liver, the liver is part of the digestive system, food does not go to the liver. Okay, it just makes a substance called bile, and that bile is placed directly into the stomach, or it can be stored in this little green structure down here. This little structure, I'm going to move this so you can see it. But that green structure is called the gallbladder, and the sole purpose of the gallbladder is to store bile. Sometimes people's gallbladder may malfunction. They may have to get it removed, and they can still survive because the liver is making the bile, and the liver does put some of that bile straight into the stomach. Another part of the digestive system is another organ called the pancreas. The pancreas produces enzymes that flow into the small intestines. They help break down proteins, fats, and starches. And just like the liver, the pancreas is an important part of the digestive system, but food does not go to the pancreas. If you look up here, this J-shaped organ is your stomach. The large triangular object here, and it sort of sits down. It's sort of like it's uplifted right here. But the liver, oops, I clicked too many buttons here. Here's your stomach. The liver's right here. The liver makes bile. The bile, underneath the liver, you have this little organ called the gallbladder. It stores bile. And then the down below, or not really below, it's behind the stomach, is where you find the pancreas. And then from here, it's going to go into this tube here, which leads into the small intestines. Okay, we had the mouth as step 1, the esophagus is step 2, stomach is step 3, small intestines is step 4, and then step 5 would be your large intestines. The large intestines contains helpful bacteria that feed on material as it passes through the large intestines. This material contains water, and it contains undigested food. Remember we said when the food material leaves the stomach, it goes into the small intestines. In the small intestines, it absorbs the nutrients. So what's left is the water and the undigested food. So as that water and undigested food goes into the large intestines and starts passing through the large intestines, the water is what's going to get absorbed into the bloodstream here. And then what you're going to end up left with will be the undigested food. Okay, and that continues over here. It says the remaining material, that undigested food, is ready for elimination from the body as it enters into the rectum, where it's compressed into a solid form. The solid waste exits the body through the anus. Now keep in mind, earlier I showed you all this that looks like tiny little lines tangled up. That was the small intestines. And that in the small intestines, it absorbed nutrients. The nutrients went into our bloodstream, went to every cell in our body. Okay, when it leaves there, it goes straight into here, and this goes throughout. This is the large intestines, also known as the colon. And as it's moving through the colon or the large intestines, water's getting absorbed. It's going straight into the bloodstream, and all that undigested food or waste keeps moving through it until it gets down here and it gets packed in there. In that area where it's getting stored and packed in, we call it the rectum. When it gets full, sends a message to our brain and tells us, ooh, I got to go to the bathroom. And then so it leaves. There's an opening down here called the anus, and that solid waste just leaves our body through that opening. And my friends, that is the end of this lesson on the digestive system. Hope you learned a lot and enjoyed it.